Yeah. Da 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 da. Whoa, after tonight, will you remember me? If I give you my love, will you remember me? Will you remember? Will you remember? Oh, yeah. This love I got for you, only for you to make you won't complain. Shall we meet again and say those sweet lovely ones again? Where would you wish to go, love? We can go, no place too far for love. Love anywhere we go, we can go. Yeah, no. Love is the only answer, as long as you can remember. Love can open doors. Whoa, whoa. After tonight, will you remember me? If I give you my love, will you remember me? Will you remember? Will you remember? Whoa.
Yeah. Never you forget this kind of feeling. Never you forget this kind of loving. Never you delay my girl when me calling. Girl, you are the reason every man and morning. Never you forget the good times and bad times. Hard days when we never used to have times. Never you forget the bad life and good life. Oh, 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 oh. Girl, will you remember? Remember, remember me. Girl, will you remember? Remember, remember me. Girl, you are danger. We not the party. You tell me when to start it. Anytime you want. Love you when you feel me. Begging me, baby.
After tonight, will you remember me? If I give you my love, will you remember me? Will you remember? Will you remember? Whoa, uno kwe mukwano, mukwano kwe mbade nonya, uno kwe mukwano. Kano ke kasera, kalungi ke mbade nsuba, kano ke kasera. Love, you're my best contender. Love, you must be tender. Make a list and write agenda. Yeah, make a list and make agenda. Love, you must remember. Love, you must remember. Whoa, after tonight, will you remember me? If I give you my love, will you remember me? Will you remember? Will you remember? Whoa,
Will you remember the time? Will you remember the time? Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yes. Yes, good evening, North America, and good morning to the rest of the world. I am David Lubuurwa, the host of BUE News and Analysis. Now, I'm so glad that you have joined us this wonderful time in our first session of BUE News and Analysis. But of course, let me first draw down a few things that will happen in our show. We'll be expecting experts from different areas, different fields in the political arena, in the economic arena, in the legal affairs, and of course, we'll go into partly the entertainment. Now, you'll be asking why I started with that song of radio. Of course, as BUE TV, we are still celebrating the life of the legend. He was a great artist, and we will always remember him. Now, there's so many things that have been happening over the last 1 week, last month, and of course, over years. And we, as BUE News and Analysis, we've been trying to gather the stories that have made headlines over the week, specifically the week of February, because so many things, so many stories have come up locally here in the United States of America, in the world, if we look into what happened in Israel, in Africa, and of course in Uganda in particular. So these are the things that we'll be looking into during this session of BUE News and Analysis. And of course, just as I've told you, we'll be having great experts who will be analyzing what happens within our societies. And of course, I want to draw to you how we'll be balancing the entire program, how things will be going. We'll be looking into the local news, things that happen here in the United States of America, where we are located here in Massachusetts, and of course, the whole country as United States. We'll be looking into international news, things that have made headlines in the international news, and of course, Africa, just as I said in the beginning of this session. So it is about us, it's about analyzing the stories that make headlines. And of course, after a short break, we'll be coming back with a few things of what has made headlines in United States of America. All of you, you'll agree with me, you've read about the memo scandal that is happening between the Republicans and the Democrats. Now, for most of you Ugandans who are watching us right now all over the world, you will be asking questions, or you're asking questions. How are we concerned about the things that are affecting most of the Ugandans here in the diaspora, especially here in the United States of America? So we'll be looking into all these details. And tonight, or today to other countries, we are not expecting any expert to sit with me here to draw a closer understanding of these stories that are making news. Today, I'm in the studio alone, and I'm going to draw just a closer understanding, a few things, analyze a few things here and there, of course, in the politics, of course, in the legal system, and of course, what is happening right now as we speak here in the United States of America. So let's go for a short break of BUE TV, and then when I come back, I'll go straight to what has made the headlines. Let's look into, of course, what is going on in the local news. You've all heard about the scandal that is happening between the Republicans and the Democrats. I want to draw something close here. Now, the Republicans allege that the Democrats, or probably the Department of Justice and FBI, abuse power over what to call the Trump electoral campaigns, in which they claim that the Russians engaged in rigging of votes and again other things. So there were so many major findings they came up with. Of course, we look into based on the classified materials, the 4-page memo claims that the FBI and the Department of Justice in 2016 used a Democratic-funded report to obtain the FISA National Security Warrant. Now, the question that many people are asking right now, how is the world concerned about this kind of story? Why are the Republicans and the Democrats fighting against each other over this situation? And why is it so concerned about the FBI? Why are we so much concerned about the FBI and the Department of Justice? Here are a few things. Now, we need to find out who signed out this memo, which we call the Nunes memo. Who is responsible for that? And of course, very many people who are against it, and I will start with, of course, the people who are against this memo. One of them is the former FBI Director, James Comey, who was fired last May over the agency's investigation again into the Russia investigations. Now, we also have his former assistant, Maccabi, who is also responsible for, again, the same investigations. He also stepped down a few weeks ago, a few days ago, in the same situation. And I've also looked into Justice Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, who oversees the work of the Special Counsel, of course, Robert Mueller, and now investigating to the Trump's campaign. Now, as BUE News and Analysis, we have to draw a close understanding into the situation. Now, if the memo shows that the FBI is put under a task not to investigate most of the things that are happening here in the United States of America, first of all, the security of the people is under questions. The intelligence is also now questioned. So whoever says that maybe this memo is not important or it's important, of course, you have to look into the national security and the other things that are affecting the people in America right now, because what affects the Americans, especially we, the Ugandans who have our brothers and sisters here in the United States of America, will affect us. You do know that most of the people who are in diaspora send, of course, financial assistance to LDCs, all developed countries. They send financial assistance to our brothers or sisters in Uganda, you know that. Those who are in Kenya, you know that. So anything that happens here, and why we had to go down and try to look into a close understanding of this entire situation, is that what affects any Ugandan, what affects any African, what affects any immigrant here in the United States of America affects the entire lineage of people who are far from the country. And of course, there are some people who are again saying that it was fine for the memo to be released. Members like Adam, the senior Democrat on the House of Intelligence Committee, say that it excludes a few things here and there. So we are still we are still looking into this entire scandal. Now, last Monday, the Democrats also released theirs. Now, the question that comes up right now is, if they release their memo and President, who is now President Trump, said that they have to look into it critically. He didn't say that 100% we are going to release it or we are going to clarify it. He said, let's first look into this. Now, there is a question. Now, we, the people who analyze such situations, we look into why was it so fast for the president to issue out this document, and why is it taking too long for him to say that, no, we have to first look into the entire situation. But of course, I'm not going to zeal there or put much of my attention here on this scenario because we expect some experts to come and join us next week. And of course, we'll be trying to draw much of the information and try to analyze the situation. How does it affect us as Ugandans in the diaspora, and how does it affect us as people in the United States of America in general, inclusive of, quote me right, inclusive of blacks, whites, yellow, green, each color. This does not discriminate anybody. It's all about us who are here in the United States of America. And of course, we are trying to see what happens after the memo is released. Does it affect the national security, or does it go to make us understand, of course, what is going on in the rest of the world? So I would like to go down to the international section. Now, this is where I'm going to put much of my attention. And of course, when I go to what is happening in Africa, you who are following me right now, you'll see what is happening. But the question that we're asking ourselves right now, and I ask you who is watching me right now, is there a possibility that the government in all our countries are working in favor of the people, or they're working in just their favor, as, quote me right, due to their selfish interests? Are the governments working for the people, or they're working for their selfish interests as individuals? So you can send me your comment or your position on this matter, and then, because that's where most of our discussions are going to be tonight. So send in your comments, your questions, everything. Of course, my team and I will be in a position to look into what's going on. What is happening in the international news? Last week, the things that made a lot of scandals, of course, in the world was when, you remember, those who read the news, that in January, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu proposed to deport over 38,000 immigrants, or 38,000, quote me right again, so-called illegal immigrants out of Israel to go back in other countries. But of course, we are looking into who are the people who are affected in this kind of situation. The major countries that are affected, we have Sudan, we have Eritrea. Now, it is reported, according to Human Rights Watch, that a few years ago, every month, Sudan, over 5,000 people were moving out of Sudan, South Sudan specifically, just because of the wars that were going on. And I think actually up to now they're still going on. And also looking into what were happening in Sudan. So we are trying to analyze all these stories. Now, who is responsible for this? The Prime Minister says that people must leave the country. which is true because Israel belongs to the Israelites. But there are some people who went there just because of the wars. There are some people who went into Israel. Of course, some went there for pleasure, others because of the political issues that are affecting them in their original countries. Now, we're looking into Sudan, where wars have been there since the new government was put into power, since Sudan was declared a country. So most of these people moving out of Sudan to go to other countries just for peace. And the Prime Minister says that these people must be put together and deported back into their countries. So the controversial situation here is that where are they going? The young boys, the young girls who are being deported, do they really remember where their families are? Do they remember where they have to start from? Do they have the knowledge of how the country is now? Now, because some of them have been out of the country for years and so many things change over time. So it is just a few days to go for them to actually be deported. But let's look into what happened during the report that was released. For now, the notice shows that those who had sought for asylum and others who are having families and a few who were legally allowed to stay in the country will not be deported. Now that reduces the number to around 20,000 people who are supposed to be deported. So the rest, the 20 are going to be deported and the rest will have that, kind of peace to stay in the country. But this is of course affecting all of us who know what is really happening in these countries. We're trying to draw a closer understanding who is affected. Why is it that now in the current time, United States says that we are deporting people back in their countries. Israel is saying we are deporting people back to their countries. Other countries are also saying the same thing. Many people are affected in this kind of situation. Now, this is my analysis as an individual, that if they're saying that these guys or these people are illegal in their countries, where are they going? How are they benefiting in this entire situation? Because there is a statement that was released says that should they not leave by the deadline, which is of course March, they're going to be imprisoned, expelled, or any other thing that will happen at the end of the day. So we are asking a question that, of course, they gave them an advantage that they can be given each $3,800 to help them in their process of leaving the country to go back in Africa. That's good. The Israel government was so, responsible to cater for these people. And of course, they say they will give them tickets. That is good. We do accept that. But the question is, are they safe? For many people who have sought for asylum in other countries, you know what the story is all about. When you go back in a country which is full of disaster, where people are killing each other on a daily basis, where people are fighting on a daily basis, you know what this means if we let it happen the way it is. Now, the authorities, of course, they're still claiming that this was done to, of course, reduce the tensions over the problems that are affecting the Israelis in Israel due to, of course, terrorism and other issues, since these people are coming from countries that are well known for terrorist attacks. Well, that is true, and we do agree with that. But let's look into other countries like Uganda and Rwanda. Uganda accepts refugees from other countries like Congo and, of course, other neighboring countries that had these kind of issues. And lately, of course, we are also trying to see Uganda saying they are sending back those people. Remember the scandal between Rwanda and Uganda that has just happened recently, when Ugandans are saying that let them be deported. And of course, the Rwandese are saying this is just a political situation. So these are things that are affecting all of us. These are things that are affecting the people in the world. These are things that are affecting the immigrants who go to these countries just to seek for peace and, of course, the love. And of course, the UN Refugee Agency has called on Israel to scrap the plan, calling it incoherent and unsafe for these people. Now, let me just draw something small here. They're going back. is there a way that human rights are being violated? Should we not put that into considerations? Should we not just respect their lives now that these countries are not yet at peace? Should we just accept their deportation? Now, that's a question that you who is watching me right now, you also have to, put together. Those who are watching us internationally via Facebook. Is this a right scenario for these people to go back in their country or in their countries? Won't it affect their families? Of course, the Israel government gave a pardon to those who are having families, but of course, they're looking into men who are having nothing. They never reported for asylum. They never did anything, but they were in Israel just for peace. And the government says, we are deporting all of you. Now, we're talking about 38,000 people. This is just my personal analysis. I think this is going to affect many people because we have seen it happen. We have seen people who are being deported back into their countries and just days after they are killed. So what I think is a question of just who is right. It's a question of, is there respect for human rights? It's a question of, are these people safe? It's a question of, what does this calling tell us? And of course, the International Criminal Court had enacted to, call Omar Bashir into, they had put charges on him because, of course, we all know that Bashir has done a lot of problems. So he has caused a lot of problems to the people of Sudan, especially those in the southern area, because there was a report that was issued, I think 1 week back, that say that the Sudanese in the south should not be part of those in the north simply because, of course, the color. This is a question that we are asking ourselves and on a weekly basis, and I've been trying to look into our sources all over the world, and people have been telling us that maybe sometime to come there will be something to be done to make sure that this does not affect the largest percentage of people in the world. So I want to take you off from Israel because I expect somebody else again to come in the weeks to come to share a big understanding of this entire situation. Of course, we'll get very experienced legal and illegal immigrants analysts who will tell us more about, of course, these details. And let me look into what is going on in Africa. Politics in Africa is almost the same. And remember, we have seen many opposition leaders who come in to swear in as presidents, in quotes, people's presidents. And this was the same case in Kenya recently on January 30th, when the Kenyan opposition leader Raila Odinga sworn in as a president of the people. The same thing has happened before, but let me take you down to what happened there. Just a simple click. I'm going to play simple click. Don't mind about the audio. I just want to show you what happened before we go into details of this story.
Nafasi yangu sasa bila kupoteza wakati kumkaribisha Baba Raila Amolo Odinga aje afanye matarajio ambayo tumetarajia leo. Karibu baba. Republic of Kenya, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the people of the Republic of Kenya, that I will preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of Kenya as by law established, and all other laws of the Republic as adopted by the people of Kenya. That I will protect, uphold sovereignty, integrity, and dignity of the people of Kenya. So,
Okay, so you have just watched a very simple and a clip that was captured by our sources from Kenya. Raila Odinga was sworn in as a president, the people's president. The question now that we are asking ourselves, is this just a trend for most of the African countries? Because we do remember that in 2016, on May 11th, in Uganda, Dr. Kizza Besigye, one of the leading opposition leaders in Uganda, was sworn in as a president for the people. That was just a day before the national president, who is now, of course, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, was sworn in as a president. The same case happened here. The difference is the number of days that took between when these guys were sworn in as leaders in these countries. We are now talking about 4 presidents in 2 countries. We have the people's president for Uganda, we have the people's president for Kenya. Uganda, we have Dr. Kizza Besigye. Kenya, we have Raila Odinga. Now, many people have come up to say that the leader for NASA, National Super Alliance, the coalition led by, Raila Odinga, as he was raising a Bible, swearing in as the people's president, was just a way to undermine the government of Uhuru Kenyatta, who is now in his 2nd term. But let me take you back to how all this happened. Last year, the elections that were held were nullified by the court after Raila pleading and saying that this wasn't the right elections because the elections were rigged. They were rigged, claiming again that the members of the Electoral Commission of Kenya were behind all this rigging of votes. So the court nullified the elections. They re-elected. Raila Odinga stood out of the race and said he wasn't going to be part of it at the end of the day. 98% voted for Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, we thought that this election was just going to let Raila Odinga go away with it. Nobody knew, apart from the insiders, that Raila Odinga would come back and swear in as the people's president. And of course, Kenya's Interior Minister said on Wednesday, a few weeks ago, that the opposition leader, Raila Odinga, mocks the people, known as the people's president, from the authorities, that this was treason. Now, according to the Interior Minister of Kenya, said that this action was a treason. Does it make a clear understanding of us that the politics of Africa is improving or the politics of Africa is putting us down? We're looking at a 73 years gentleman, President Raila Odinga, swearing in. The government of Kenya was there. Unlike in Uganda, where President Museveni would put forces and, of course, will make everything impossible for anyone who tries to oppose him. In Kenya, it was different. Thousands and thousands of people came up, gathered, and they saw this big event happen. In the video you've just seen, you have seen how many camera people were there, how many news reporters were there, how many media stations were there. It was just a big event for most of the Kenyans who are in support of Raila Odinga. Now, our sources tell us that the problems that are affecting Kenyans right now, the confusion is between not just the 2 leaders, but the confusion is between tribes. We do understand that Raila Odinga is part of the Luo, which lately has been marginalized. And of course, Kenyatta comes from the other side, which is, of course, now in the driving seat. So Who is responsible for all this? Personally, I would take the two of them. There is a fight over power. There is also a need to understand the key possibilities for the people of Kenya. If we go down to what the Interior Minister said, and of course what other lawyers have to come up and say, I've watched one of the key, of course, leaders in Kenya who has been in that power, or who has been inspiring many generations, PLO Olmomba, saying that what Raila Odinga did was against the constitution of Kenya. He does not agree with what he did. Of course, we go down. Initially, the government had already said that they would try to, of course, make this event not happen. But it appears to be that Raila Odinga has got special forces that give him the power to do whatever he wants in Kenya. Now, we're looking into, is the security of the Kenyans okay? If Raila Odinga, who is in opposition, can come up and say that I am swearing in as the people's president. Because right now, as we speak, we have two governments running Kenya. We have the people's president government, Raila Odinga, and we also have the national government of Uhuru Kenyatta. What was witnessed, to some it is drama, to others it's real. To different analysts, they say this is now a new trend in Africa. This is now called the East African scandal. It's no more of what we used to remember as the Arab scandal. This is now the East African scandal, that most of the leaders are now using this alternative. The opposition leaders are using this alternative to take control of their governments, so that the governments can try to understand that they are on the right track. Now, looking into this same story, many, of course, reporters have come up to criticize the government of Kenya over the closure of the national TVs. Of course, the major channels in Kenya. You remember NTV was shut down, Citizens TV was shut down, KTV was shut down. And we do come to understand that some of them have been, of course, let free to go back on air. But this was, to other analysts, or our sources tell us that this was a sign of fear by the Kenyan government to cancel or to stop these networks from operating. This was a sign of cowardness, according to our sources. This is not what it was supposed to be done. This is, when you look into other human rights reports that are coming up, they're telling us that what the government did was a sign of violation of human rights, the freedom of speech, the freedom of press. We're looking into what happened here and how the Kenyan people are being impacted, and of course East Africa, because we are looking at Kenya as an economy that is driving the rest of East African countries. It is an economy that represents East Africa in the global economy. So once there is a problem, there is a faction, there is a sector, there is something that is now going to develop at the end of the day, and we will see people, one, losing lives, because we've seen it in Kenya happen during Mike Kibaki, and of course against Raila Odinga, when the strikes came up, and of course many people lost their lives. And some analysts say that this is unacceptable. They don't expect such a situation, a tragedy to happen again. But this is where we are going. If Kenya under Uhuru Kenyatta, and of course his vice William Ruto, try to arrest Raila Odinga, this is where we are going. This is what we are seeing. These are the problems that are affecting the Kenyan people in Kenya, and of course all over the world. And once Kenya is affected, Uganda is also going into the same situation. So during the meeting, Ruto and other senior officials warned editors against live coverage of the ceremony and threatened to revoke their licenses if they failed to comply, according to the chairman of Kenya Editors Guild. Now, this happened a day before the inaugurations. If the government tries if the government of Kenya tries to undermine the power of the press, it is like undermining the peace of the people. It's undermining the love, the creativity within the system. I want to play for you what happened during the Kenyatta inaugurations. Let's have a closer look at it.
Your Excellency, Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, President-elect of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellency, Mama Margaret Kenyatta, Your Excellencies, heads of state and government here present, Your Excellency, the Deputy President-elect, Honorable William Ruto, Your Excellency, Rachel Ruto, Your Excellencies, Vice Presidents and heads of delegations, the Honorable Speakers of our Parliament, wananchi watukufu, amjambo. Whereas Uhuru Kenyatta was on the 30th of October.
Now, that is what happened in Kenya. We are yet to go on with the same video. Many people also attended Kenyatta's inauguration ceremony. We didn't see any challenge there. We also didn't see any challenge during Raila Odinga's, of course, inaugurations. Now, somebody has just sent me a comment here, actually sent a message here, and it says that maybe there is some more of organization within Kenya that fighting is now no longer the order of their governance. And of course, yes, I can agree with that, because if Kenyatta didn't interfere with Raila Odinga's inaugurations, of course, we come to understand that this is now a way of showing maturity in their elections, a way of showing maturity in their governance. But that does not mean that the government had to shut down, of course, the media networks, because this affects, of course, the majority of Kenyans and East Africa, and of course, even us who gather the news from such channels. And of course, we want to thank KTN for giving us that live coverage. That was really nice. So, all these problems that are affecting these people, all these issues that are rising up on a daily basis in the country, are telling us what is going on in Africa. And in our analysis, we are asking, is Africa still safe for the Africans? If the governments, between the governments themselves and of course the opposition, are fighting day by day to an extent of having now two leaders within the same country. For some, it brought back memories of years of dictatorship during the 1980s and 1990s, when heavy-handed government censorship was common in Kenya, in a very slippery situations, when the government had the power to shut down media houses, when the government had the power not to reconcile with others. So it is just a continuation of what had happened before. And Kenya authorities, of course, have restricted again media houses. This is just developing on a daily basis. And we're still trying to draw, of course, a bigger picture into this entire situation. Is Kenya changing from what we call the traditional politics, or we are still seeing Kenya into a country that caters for the interests of the people? Because the traditional politics of Kenya is, of course, always about scandal. Will there be a time for Raila Odinga to come and negotiate with Kenyatta? Because these two seem not to work hand in hand. Some analysts say, again, it is between tribes. Others, it's between personalities. And of course, we are looking into, because Odinga comes from, again, a very strong political background. Kenyatta also comes from a very strong political background because both of their fathers were strong in their days as leaders in Kenya. Will there be a change? Will there be a common understanding? Will there be a common knowledge for most of the Kenyans to understand what is at play, what is at stake now? That's where Kenya is right now. And of course, I'm analyzing that based on my knowledge and of course from other sources, of course friends who came up and said, hey, we have to look into this. What is going on in Kenya? What do you see happening in Kenya? Let me play for you this video again as we continue to see what happened. I'm just taking you back in it. This is the Chief Justice for Kenya. The same panel that said, no, we're not accepting the elections. Now that is Kenyatta during his elections. Now let's go back into the studio where I am. You who is watching me right now, do you think we are seeing a change in the politics of Uganda? Are we seeing a change in the politics of Kenya? Are we seeing a change in the politics of Africa? Because this is affecting us on a weekly and of course on a daily basis. Let me go to Uganda. President Museveni also did the same thing. The difference was they censored the press during the elections. Of course, you remember what had to happen on Facebook channels, especially amongst the Ugandans who are in Uganda, and how you had to get the information. A few channels were left to work and the others were stopped. So this is now turning out to be a culture of African politics. And our sources tell us that if the governments of Africa do not change the way they're working, the way they're trying to claim that they're improving the economy, this is going to affect everyone at the end of the day. In Kenya, we do understand that the government under Ruto and of course Uhuru Kenyatta, they tried to believe they had to work hand in hand with the opposition. NASA had to work in hand with the Kenyatta's team. But there is a claim, according to their internal sources, that maybe the opposition is interested to take over the entire country, not working for the benefit of the country. And of course, NASA also says that no, the government is working so hard to put us down. This is what happened in Uganda. And of course, right now as we speak, Kenyatta, of course, right now as we are talking, Dr. SJ is no longer seen on the scene because the government is working so hard to put him down. Now, this is just an analysis of what is happening within the African economy. The African governments, how they are trying to balance the equation in terms of their leadership. And then where is it taking the African countries if we are seeing these scandals coming up and coming in and out on a daily basis? Are we trying to see a change? Or we're trying to see problems happening day in, day out? Problems affecting the Kenyans, problems affecting the Ugandans, problems affecting the East African community. Because once the government is unstable, we're looking into a situation where the entire economy will be out. So, who has the responsibility to stabilize the economy? Who has the responsibility to stabilize the politics? This is not about what many people call us, that we who try to analyze such situations, that we are politicizing everything. We are politicizing the economy. We are politicizing everything. No, we are looking into how does politics affect us in these economies. How does politics affect trade? How does politics affect every individual in these countries? And of course, I want to go back to, I want to leave you with this song as I go into a short break. It's the song I started with as we celebrate the days of Mose Radio, commonly known in our field, and of course his original names as Nachinti J. Sechibogo. So let me play for you this song and I come back with that same story.
yeah. Da 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 da. Whoa, after tonight, will you remember me? If I give you my love, will you remember me? Will you remember? Will you remember? Oh, yeah. This love I got for you, only for you to mind you won't complain. Shall we meet again and say those sweet lovely ones again? Where would you wish to go, love? We can go, no place too far for love. Love anywhere we go, we can go. Yeah, no. Love is the only answer, as long as you can remember. Love can open doors. Whoa, whoa. After tonight, will you remember me? If I give you my love, will you remember me? Will you remember? Will you remember? Whoa.
Yeah. Never you forget this kind of feeling. Never you forget this kind of loving. Never you delay my girl when me calling. Can do what there is on every man and morning. Never you forget the good times and bad times. Hard days when we never used to have times. Never you forget the bad life and good life. Oh, 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 oh. God, will you remember, remember, remember me? God, will you remember, remember, remember me? Girl, you a danger, we not the party. You tell me when to start it, anytime you want. Love you when you feel me, begging me, baby.
After tonight, will you remember me? If I give you my love, will you remember me? Will you remember? Will you remember? Whoa, no kwe mukwano, mukwano kwe mbade nonya, no kwe mukwano. Kano ke kasera, kalungi ke mbade nsuba, kano ke kasera. Love, you're my best contender. Love, you must be tender. Make a list and write agenda. Yeah, make a list and make agenda. Love, you must remember. Love, you must remember. Whoa, after tonight, will you remember me? If I give you my love, will you remember me? Will you remember? Will you remember? Whoa,
Will you remember the time? Will you remember the time? Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, welcome you back into from that song. Now, that is a song that makes us really remember a hero, a legend. But before I go into Moselle Radio story and the conspiracies that are coming up on a weekly, on a daily basis, I want us to first, let me first go into Facebook and I look at the questions that you guys have been asking here. Let me go one by one. Butela James, thank you. You're watching from North Carolina. Thank you so much. Elijah, you're watching from Brooklyn, New York City. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining. Let me look into... I need a question here. I need to know something here. Well, when I was talking about the Republicans, one of the representatives here on Facebook said that Republicans are racist. I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to agree with that. I believe that we are all Americans, and of course I want to agree with what you said, but let me just leave it to the public to put their attention on that. Are they racist in nature? I'm not going to talk about that so much. Yes, governments are working for self-interest. Yes, I think this is Elsa Kamwanda. What are you saying that it is a yes and true. Governments are working for self-interest. And of course, this is what actually we've been analyzing. And I do agree with you. Just like other sources were telling us that African governments lately are working for their self-interest. So let me continue to look into what other people have had to say here. I see so many comments and messages coming in. Talk about James, you're saying, talk about all 55 African leaders. They are always corrupt. Now, that is true. That is true. We are looking into what is happening, of course, in Kenya, because some people say that Kenya's political problems are based on corruption, and the same case that has been happening back in Uganda. That is the same case that has been happening in Nigeria, same case that has been happening almost everywhere in African countries. And we are waiting to see whether the current Liberian president, George Weah, what he will have to do, whether he will be part of the corrupt group or he will stand out of it, because we've known him for his greatness. And we are wondering whether he will make that number still remain as 55, or he will at least reduce the number to 54. So, George Weah, our eyes are on you. Everyone who is watching BUE News and Analysis right now, his or her eyes are on you, waiting to see whether you're transforming Africa or whether you're also joining the club. So, I'm still with our friends who are watching us on Facebook. Let me look into the question that has just come in the message. This is, I think, Chengwa from, this must be Chengwa from Kenya. Actually, Chengwa is from Kenya, saying that maybe the problems that we do have in Kenya are that Uhuru Kenyatta doesn't believe that Raila Odinga will ever be a president of Kenya at any time. And we don't know whether this is making us change or this is putting us down. He also continues to say that if Raila Odinga is not interested in working with the Uhuru Kenyatta, then the scandals we had in 2007 are most likely going to come back. Most likely going to come back. This is what I actually also talked about, that if there is no change, if there is no understanding of what is going on, chances are that these same scandals, these same problems that happened in 2007, for Ugandans, you remember what happened, that the economy was almost going crazy, that you never had a chance to trade, you never had a chance to do any business, just because Kenya was affected by, of course, these scandals. But let me go back to where I was coming to in Uganda. The top stories that made headlines last week: Mzee Radio's death and Mohamed Chirumila taking back the files to his bosses. But I want to start with Mzee Radio's situation. We all believe and we pray so hard that he rests in peace. But there are now conspiracies or theories that are developing on a weekly basis. Stories that maybe his death was planned. And the others are saying maybe this is just a situation where we have to gather a lot of information to know what exactly happened. Then some other individuals are saying maybe it was just a coincidence that maybe they were fighting and he died just out of the blue. Other theories that are coming up that Moses Sechibogo died actually before he was taken to the hospital. And of course, the other theories that are coming up, Moses died on the day he was reported that he's dead. You've heard, you've seen, you've watched, you've heard on social media networks when different commentators, analysts, legal analysts, different spectators, different individuals come up and say, no, maybe this was a planned event. Maybe his death was planned probably by colleagues, enemies, or other individuals. And so, personally, I also had to sit down and I had to talk about the same situation, because we had to look into how did this happen? What reports came after this scenario? Who is responsible? Now, these are the questions that we are asking ourselves. The investigations that the police is doing, and of course there are other private investigators who are also on the same case, we are waiting to see who is going to give us a right report over what caused the death of Moses Radio. I had to put down a few questions over this situation. We talk about maybe he was killed, maybe it was planned or not. We have watched two individuals come up. His former producer, Washington, talking about the same situation. And he said that he was there. He actually knows the truth. He actually knows the truth over what happened when Moses Radio, when Moses Sechiwogo was killed. I'm going to play for you a clip that I got from some of our local channels in Uganda. Of course, I would say international TVs. But before I play it for you, I want to first draw a close understanding into this very same situation. If Radio died on the day he was reported, which was of course 1st February, and no one the days before came up to say that this is how the situation happened. We didn't see Washington coming out to say, no, they were fighting and this happened. We didn't see the lady who called a radio, Pamela, coming out to say, Radio was beaten in this and this situation. We only saw all these guys coming out after his death. And of course, after many people starting asking questions, what caused his death? I want to look into a few things that are happening before I actually start playing the clip or bringing it out to hear from what Washington had to say when Samson Kasumba of NBS had to interview him to tell us his story. Many people were telling us east and west, east and west, east and west. Radio was killed. That is true. Be it they were fighting, be it whether it was a planned event or they were just fighting, he is dead. He is gone. The media now has the responsibility to keep covering that story until we come to the basis or to the genesis of what caused his death. Right now, I'm talking about not just a simple musician. I'm talking about a talented gentleman who had the knowledge to write music, who had the knowledge to sing, who had the knowledge to assist producers in making the right melodies. Someone who has been followed by thousands and thousands of people over the world. I'm talking about a person who was watched by close to more than enough people in the world. Many DJs, many channels here in the United States of America were doing the same thing. But let me first take you to what Samson Kasumba had, the interview he had with Washington.
What do you know of what took place?
I actually know the truth of what took place. I would like to first send out my condolences to the late's family, the people he used to work with, and the whole of Uganda and the whole of Africa and the whole world, because he was a great legend.
Okay. Yeah. So, where are you in Entebbe?
I would like to start, it was on the 23rd of January when this darkness set upon us. I left home and went to Neverland. That is where they built their house in Machinde. I normally go there every day to, like, you know, carry out some productions for my boys. But this day I found Radio and he wanted to go to Entebbe.
So that is Washington, the former producer for Moses Radio. In some of the best songs they did produce, I think Baby Don't Cry, which was a collab between the Good Life crew with the Nigerian artist Wizkid. So this is now a bigger story because the international community had to come out to announce the death of a superstar, the death of a legend, the death of a genius. Now, Washington said in that video that we've just showed you a little bit of it, that Moses Radio, when the day he got all these problems, he was there, and he said at the beginning of his conversation with the reporter that I actually know the truth. So if somebody starts with that, I actually know the truth. Now, when you listen to that clip, unfortunately, the time we have cannot enable us to play the entire clip, but I'm going to give you a few things Washington had to talk about. In comparison to what the other lady, Pamela, who called Mose Radio, said, Washington said that he got Mose Radio out of the bar when he was beaten. He had his head cracked. Pamela said, unfortunately, we're not in a position to get Pamela's clip, but she said that she took Mose out of where they were fighting after he was beaten into the car, and they drove to Emmanuel. Now, the question that of course, almost every analyst has been telling me or asking me to think about is, who of the two took Radio into the car or to the hospital? Who of the two was in a position to do that? If this wasn't a planned event, and nobody's saying that this was a planned event, but of course we're still waiting to see what the reports from police have to tell us. Of course, now police is under pressure because the public is demanding a lot of information over what caused the death of a genius. Now, the owner of the bar, of course, was taken into custody, and of course they had some interrogations, and of course many other people have come up. But according to our sources, they tell us that it was the responsibility of police to first arrest all the suspects. It wasn't done. Washington was left to actually go on even media to air out his views. Pamela did the same thing. So the question now we have to ask over the security of Ugandans: is the Ugandan police ready to safeguard the people of Uganda? If such scenarios, the investigative body cannot sit down and try to analyze the situation and of course take the suspects out of the public. These are the questions that I want you who is watching me right now. I want to go on Facebook right now and see what comments are coming out over Mose Radio's death. Let me first draw a few things here. What people are telling me. Let me see what people are telling me. This is a private message coming in over the same situation. James Katamba is saying this was a planned event. We can't believe that these guys were responsible for his death, but of course we pray that God will forgive them. Now that is a question, that is a point from that has just come in. Let me look into some other stories that are, of course, who is now sending me a message here. Sengedo Moses says, we don't really see how people can die, people can be engaged in such a scandal if the government is not willing to investigate over what caused his death. We are not sure whether even our other lives are also safe. Now, these are the comments or messages that are coming in over what people are really saying or why people are so concerned about their security. Because if a national star was killed and reports are taking ages to come out, which is of course okay legally for reports to take ages until the investigative body comes to a proper conclusion over what causes a certain situation. Now, for this case, Radio Moses' death, we do understand that that's acceptable. Legally, it is acceptable that we don't have to rush the investigations of certain cases. But of course, we also have to ask our questions. Moses was beaten. One person, Washington, who is the producer, said that he had his head cracked. Few things we have to ask here. Is there any picture that has been released over what happened in the bar? Since many people know Moses Radio as, or knew Moses Radio as a fighter in such scenarios, is there any clip from any WhatsApp, any social media saying that maybe this gentleman was killed or maybe this is how the fight was? Is there any clip at the scene? Right now as we speak, we have not seen any clip. So the question now, according to our sources, they say that the question that we have to ask is, if he was beaten there at the scene, there are chances that the owner of the bar had to check each and every one's phone to clearly erase anything that was recorded. Because according to the stories that we get from people who are close to the bar, they say that Moses first there was a scandal between the owner of the bar and Moses Radio, to an extent that Moses had to pour wine or the drinks they were taking all over the individuals who were in the group where they were drinking from. That is true. But technically, in the world in which we are living in today, if such a scenario happened with such a superstar, one will get out of his phone, go live on Facebook and say, check what our superstar is doing. One will say, check, Moses Radio is fighting in the bar right now. One will post a picture on WhatsApp, and of course it will make news because we've seen it before. This time it did happen. To a religious basis, one will say it is fate that nobody wanted to take any picture. Technically, that is impossible in the world we are living in today. I was able to talk to a friend of mine in the legal body of Uganda. And when I called him, we were talking about, of course, this issue of Radio's death, what caused it. And he said, this is a situation where now the government has to wake up. Because if superstars can be killed and no footage is seen in a bar that has cameras around, there is a question we have to ask over the security of the people. That is what he said. And I'm also now concerned over the security of those who are not superstars or those who are not always on the media. Are they safe? Now, you Ugandan who is watching me right now, the question I'm asking you, are you safe? If no footage can be got when such a scenario happens, if the police takes ages to come and start making the investigations. Yesterday, we saw police going at the bar to do the investigations. Of course, they had to ask the owner of the bar what really happened. Now, this happened days after Moses' burial. It happened days after Moses' death. It happened days after Moses was put into the hospital. Technically, in all advanced countries like United States of America, once such a scenario happens to a superstar, immediately the police, the FBI, and other bodies will be at the scene to cover what exactly really happened. It took close to 1 week plus days for the police to go to the scene to start making the investigations. Right now, a friend of mine called me yesterday and told me now the police has to go down into the cameras that are put on such buildings and look at each and every individual who was in there. The cameras have to tell us who was there at that time when Moses was fighting, because they said they were drinking with a group of other people. Of course, Troy comes in lately that he was the cause of the death. We saw more than enough pictures of people who are claimed to have caused Radio's death or the injuries that led him to what we now remember. Did the police do the right thing? after days had passed, after the public coming out to say what caused, then the police starts going to the scene. Of course, we understand the town clerk of Entebbe had to close the bar, but that was done days after. In any very serious country, the police and other investigators were supposed to have been there immediately the day or the day after the report that Moses Radio was injured. Just for their records. That was never done. So this is just a special analysis that we've been looking into, and of course we are working so hard to at least bring here a legal analyst and of course a security analyst to come and tell us in such a scenario what can happen. We're just working so hard to get one person to come and be part of this program so that they can technically explain much of what really happened. Pamela, who called Moses Radio, says they are friends, and of course she says the name which Moses Radio had saved in his phone is sister. That is right. The same scenario has happened before. So is the police doing the right job to make sure that all these investigations are put together? Is the police doing the right situation to make sure that the people of Uganda are safe despite all the conspiracies that are coming up? Because as BUE News and Analysis, we are going to keep following up on this story until the police releases the report. We are not putting police under pressure to release the report, but we are reminding the police of Uganda that during such situations, they must act accordingly. Now, this is according to me. The police has to now start revising their ways of making the security of our Ugandans or of our people clear to everyone. Because it is the responsibility of the police to perform that job. Now, if you listen to the two people, Pamela and Washington, the producer, each claims to have done the job of taking the deceased into the car. So who is who in this kind of situation? Who is doing what? Who did what? In Pamela's interview that we got from, of course, I watched that from Spark TV. She never mentioned anywhere Washington. Never did she say anything about Washington. I had to watch this same clip over and over just to come up with a clear understanding of the situation. Washington, in his interview, talks so much about Pamela. Washington says so much. Let me. I think we still have some time. I want to play for you this video of Washington again. Of course, I'm going to tell you. I want to play for you the video of Washington again. In a few minutes to come, I'm going to show you almost the entire video of what happened. Washington says that he knows what really happened at the scene. Let's watch him from here and see what happened.
Some productions for my boys. But this day, I phoned Radio and he wanted to go to Entebbe because he's constructing one of his great houses there. And he told me, would you please give me a lift? Just escort me as we talk about life. I have some little money I need to go pay the hardware shops. I said, it's okay, I have no problem. So we got into the car at around 3 p.m. in the afternoon. We were actually meeting with Weasel and one of Weasel's brothers who is from Sweden. They were, talking. So we left them and we said bye. And we drove to Entebbe. Along the way, we talked about life. He was preaching about...
You and Radio?
Yes, me and Radio.
Two in the car?
No, we were three. There's one other friend of mine, he's called Shine.
Okay.
And He's my very good friend and
He's
radio.
also in the country.
Yeah, he's around in the country. On the way we were talking about life, we were saying we need to love each other. We need to work together this year. We should stop being divided and all that stuff. I was so shocked this coming out of radio, because radio, I don't really like know him for like, he's always rebuking. He's always, if you do something wrong, he's always telling you that you've done something wrong. But this day, it was so funny that he was talking.
Okay, so you have at least watched what Washington had to, tell the public. And of course, if you have a chance, you can go and look for other stories over the same. You will listen to what he had to say. And if you compare that same story with what Pamela had to say, there's so many questions that, of course, are still rising. But of course, I'm not going to put much of my attention there. Let me go straight to, again, another story that made headlines in Uganda over the last 1 to 2 weeks about Mohamed Chilumila, who had to take back his files to his bosses. General Kale Kaihura, when he was interviewed, he said, no, we have to first leave this. Let's go and, he asked the media personnel, the media people to go and read the laws that govern police. That is what the IGP, the Inspector General of Police, had to say about Mohamed Chilumila's situation. Now, all this came after Mohamed Chilumila declared to send back, of course, the reports or the files and everything to do away with police of the Republic of Uganda. According to his words, he said he is tired. Now, we had to get this simple story from one of our friends who sent us a clip of what happened. So I want to ask my producer to play it for you.
From resigning.
Just a full screen to see what happened.
I have resolved this 31st day of January to disassociate my relationship with the Uganda Police Force. The days I'm remaining to put on this uniform are the few days I am appearing before court. If the court finds me innocent, I will write a formal document seeking for early retirement. And if the force does not approve my early retirement on grounds of harassment, I'll have to sue and petition the High Court to see if there is any provision within the law which blocks me from being retired. I have not seen a single police officer being dragged to court out of the recommendations of the Human Rights Commission. What I am after, I want to leave the police when I'm a clean fellow in the eyes of the public, but I'm a bad man for interrupting with activities of the criminals, whom I've always mentioned: the Chitatas, the Faisal Katendes, the Nixon Agumas, the Agumas, those Agasirwes. I mentioned it several years ago, and you seem not to understand what I was saying. I mean you, the administration of the police, that team called the PAC. Why do you elevate status of a police officer who is a criminal? And if whatever I have spoken today, there is a statement which constitutes an offense, please add it on the ones which are existing. Is it still worth it trying fellow police officers? If there is a committee which should try policemen, it should be consisting of veteran officers. There is nobody
forces. And these questions now, of course, come to us. What causes this scandal in general? Is it just because Mohamed Chilumila, the former DPC, had the intention of telling the truth to the police officers, or is it because he said the truth to the public? We remember, those of you who have been watching what has been happening in Uganda over the last few years, when Mohamed Chilumila was still in Nansana, when he was transferred to Odi Kampala, when he was transferred to other places, until when he was taken to Jinja. You have seen how his struggles has been coming up on a daily basis. And of course, the government says that no, what he did is not right. That is according to the police officials who are, of course, inclusive of the police spokesperson, say that this is not right. This is against the police law. This is against the dignity of police, and of course this is against the Republic of Uganda's constitution. Now we have to draw a close understanding. If this was against what the constitution of police says, or the constitution of the people says, or the constitution of the Republic of Uganda says, we have to draw a close understanding. What causes this scandal? If Chilumila had to come to the media and not to go straight into, or to go and seek for permission from his bosses, there are chances that the government was working so hard not to listen to him. And that's why he had to decide to come and speak to the public directly. There is also a possibility that Mohamed Chilumila was scared that if he had gone through the right process, his story would have ended up like the story of the great late Felix Kaweesi. People are asking these questions, and of course, I'm also trying to draw a closer understanding of how it impacts the society and how police confusion is affecting the rest of the Ugandans in and outside Uganda. Chilumila comes out to say that he knows some of the big bosses within the forces are against him because he was against the criminals who are being protected by the police. He also continues to say that this has been happening over and over. He outlined members of the community, of course, who have been in the cameras everywhere. Chitata Abdul, who is to some is a criminal gang leader, and the others, according to Inspector General of Police, a very wonderful person who has been helping the police to curb down our criminals. Chilumila also looked into and talked about other individuals, some who have been already arrested and others who were killed. Now, because of the time we have, I want to draw just a faster understanding into the situation. Emilian said that this was against the law of police, and Chilumila has to be put into court of justice, and of course, police court first. He was arrested, taken to police the day he was supposed to appear before court. Police, through its through its flying squad, had to take him off his home, and of course, destroying. In other words, the best word is destroying his house, just because they wanted his personality, or they wanted him as an individual. Who is responsible for that? Did the police go back and repair the door that was spoiled? Did the police try to do its individuals? Now, I just want to thank you. That I want to leave you with all these questions about Mohamed Chilumila. We've not had enough time because time is against us always. Of course, you know what the media is all about with the time. So I just want to thank you, and I ask you to share this video. I ask you to follow all our other programs that we do have. Tomorrow we have Jordan Sekatawa, who will be here, of course, talking about the social life of individuals here in the United States of America. And of course, we expect him to start inviting other people in the world. And on Friday, we have DJ Paddy live here with his music and of course, giving us the latest stories in the entertainment industry. And I'll be back on Wednesday next week to again analyze situations and stories that are making headlines within the week. And I'll be coming with an expert in the different field, depending on what will have made the story during that time. Thank you so much for watching BUE News and Analysis. See you soon next week.